So over the years, many amendments have been rejected due to different reasons, so we'll just go through them. The first one, Service 2, the whole idea of cutting Service 2 was by none other than ex-Transport Minister Waswaran. So yeah, the initial plan was to like introduce something like 2M. So 2M would be from Changi Village to Tanah Merah. Tanah Merah MRT, and then it would just loop back. But in the end, that did not happen. 2A and 2B happened instead. So the whole thing about 2A and 2B is that it was kind of inspired by 2M, and they found out that if you cut like Service 2, if you cut it to become either Changi Village to Tanah Merah Loop or Changi Village to Bedok Loop, there would be a really, really huge outcry. And, to avoid backlash, they simply decided to degrade Service 2, and they came up with these two short working trips that terminated at Bedok MRT instead. And then the next one, which is also by the same person, Service 170. Now, I just cannot fathom why this is even being considered, but basically 170 would be something like Queen Street, and it will terminate at like Gali Batu Depot, which doesn't make sense to me. It's like, why does 170 have to exist in the first place if it doesn't go to Malaysia? And not just that, you're not even connecting 170 and 170X together. You're just splitting them, and you are like completely killing off the purpose of the entire service. So because they brought this up to Malaysia, casually, and let's just say Malaysia wasn't happy about it, so they had to scrap that ridiculous idea of 170 terminating at Gali Batu without even going to Malaysia. And at that point, 170 might as well not exist anymore. So yeah, since it was a bad idea, it got rejected. Another one that was rejected is 67. I'm not sure how they even plan to shorten this service. Like, was it to Queen Street? Was it to Beauty World ITH? I have no idea, but I think this one occurred in like year 2017. And during that time, they were like, oh, there's downtown line already. Let's just kill 67. But it turns out 67 is like really, really sustainable on weekends because there are a lot of people commuting to Little India from both sides, be it from the Choa Chu Kang side or the Tampines side or East West Line side. And it's just way more convenient than MRT for these commuters. That's why they even take like 67 in the first place. So again, in fear of backlash, they backtracked on it. The next one would be, okay, it was 860, then it became 865, and then it got transferred to SBS Transit, and then it got withdrawn, and then they compensated with 119. And the other one was like Trans Island Service 5. It got withdrawn, and then they compensated with 970. So for the bottom two ones, this was like kind of a result of like um okay, I guess you can say it's not really like a failed withdrawal or anything. They did indeed withdraw the two services, but because the backlash was so strong, they had to reinstate either like part of it or pretty much the entire route, or like almost the entire route, like around 70% of it, I would say, due to backlash. There is also another one which thankfully never even made it to the drawing board but was deliberated a few times. It was Service 68. So 68 is from Tampines to Tampines North and Pasir Ris. And the reason why it was even considered for like rationalization is pretty dumb. So they wanted to keep this part and they wanted to cut this part. And they cited that there was a lack of double deckers for service 118, and they wanted to funnel all of the double decker buses from this service to 118. So they did not proceed with this. Instead, they downgraded services like 2, 6, service 12, and so on and so forth. They just downgraded whatever they can to boost 118, and also like recently to boost 84G and 84W as well. I don't exactly remember like which double deckers went to which, because it's like flexible. They call it cloud bus. Other people call it jump bus, but conceptually they just needed the double deckers, and at that time they did not have enough. Oh, I think recently the 43 also, you see more single deckers nowadays, so this could explain why. But overall, the cut was just the plans for the cut was just stupid. So now I'm gonna talk about Tampines North. So for Tampines North, SBS Transit was given like, actually it was not just SBS Transit. It was like, I think Go Ahead as well. It's like there were a few services that were like under consideration at that time. I'm just gonna list them all out. I don't remember if this was like every single one of them, but eventually SBS Transit, they chose this, and they chose this as well. Go Ahead decided not to proceed with this extension, and then SBS Transit also decided not to proceed with either this or this. So these three were like chosen. And then there was this one which was like under deliberation for like really, really long to extend to Tampines North. And the reason why they rejected this is because, okay, this is Avenue 5, Central 2, Central 1, Concourse. So this is like going up, and going down it would be like this. I, I forgot the road name. I think it was Central 7 and then Avenue 5. The problem with doing it this way is that currently 39 stops at Tampines Concourse. This is like the temporary bus interchange over here. And there are bus stops like over here as well as over here. But because you're turning right, and if you want to call the bus stop, you do not have enough leeway, like right turn filter, to like turn right. So if if the 39 amendment were to proceed, 39 would have to go this way instead. Concourse, Central 1, Central 2, and Avenue 5. And when you do this, you run into the congestion from all the buses exiting the bus interchange as well. So in the end, they found that it was not worth it. they decided to let 39 remain at concourse for the time being, and in due time they will just throw it back to Tampines interchange. So that's for 39. And then there was another one which was 298. The one thing that was never disclosed to the public, and that's the reason why a lot of enthusiasts, when they make the videos about, like, hey, this is 298's real reason, the real reason why the amendment was delayed. And they gave the whole idea about the bus stops being delayed, but I'm sorry to say that's not the full picture. So 298, the original plans was from Tampines Concourse. They would have a north loop like this, and then I think this side over here, Tampines North Drive or Avenue 2, I forgot what's the road name, it would be express. And 298 would just call bus stops along Tampines Street. I think it was 62 for the time being. Yeah, 62 or 68. I think 62 for the time being. So this was the north loop. And then the south loop is pretty much the same. It's just basically like, the route that you see today. And at this point of time, it had nothing to do with 298X because 298X wasn't even like a deliberation at that time. So this plan, oops. So this plan was to have a north loop as well as a south loop, like an interim stage. This is to buy time for Tampines North temporary bus interchange. It was still under construction at that time, so it was just to buy time for the interchange to be done. So this was kind of like the interim plan um, to convert 298 into a town link, but temporarily only. And in the end, the whole route would become one in the sense that, like, they would just extend it as per usual, which is like the 298 that we see today. But they found it more worth to just, rush the interchange and then skip this whole town link intermediate step completely. So because the decision was made to rush the ITH, it meant like the bus stops weren't done yet. So yes, the bus stops weren't done is just one reason, but a lot of enthusiasts, they do not have like the full story regarding why 298's whole amendment was delayed, why it did not go into Tampines North together with these two. So this is the real reason that most people don't know. And the next one, I'm not 100% sure about it, but that ex-transport minister hated 130. And back then, it was also, they were also deliberating on like cutting 162. So one of the plans was to merge both of them. I do not know how that would be done, but that would have been done, but it's probably Upper Thomson Road. This is like Jalan Todak, Siming Road, Siming Drive, Siming Avenue, Bishan Street 22, Ang Mo Kio Avenue 8, 3, and 6. So basically, this whole part would be just cut off. This was like the original plan because back then, that ex-transport minister, he wanted to just cut 130 so badly. And the reason he gave was equally as stupid. It was, oh, extensive duplication with north-south line because 130 passes by Raffles Place. I'm I'm like, what do you even mean by that? 130 doesn't even, you know, touch north-south line other than Raffles Place, and it doesn't even touch Novena. It's just Raffles Place and Ang Mo Kio. That's it. I don't even get the reasoning behind this. But yes, this was like the sort of the original plan, like the vague original plans for like a merger of 130 and 162 to like Yio. I'm also not like 100% sure about the next one, which is 76. So this happened in like around 2016, but as far as the planning goes, I believe it probably took place around 2014 to 15. So the plans was like this is Paya Lebar, and then this is Tanjong Katong, Mountbatten, Amber, Marine Parade. So at that time, okay, 76 used to loop at okay, it used to terminate at Marine Parade Terminal, and then it got converted to a loop when the terminal closed, loop at Siglap Link. And then it got cut short to loop at Marine Crescent and Terrace. So it's like that. And I do not remember like the original proposal at all, but I believe it had something to do with like keeping this bus stop and then going up, was it Telok Kurau or something? Changi Road, Jalan Turi, and then Eunos Road 2. And then it was honestly quite weird. And this meant that like 76 had to, downgrade to single deckers or something along those lines. But then come to think of it again, maybe it was via like Still Road instead. It was something along those lines. I knew that 76 and had like there was a previous plan for this one before they decided to just cut 76 to Eunos and then introduce like, 150 to loop here and then introduce 134 to like take over this sector like this. But conceptually, just know that 76, the amendment had a previous plan which I myself unfortunately do not remember. The next one is an amendment that had been withheld for a very long time. It was in the works as early as 2021. Now it's 2024 and they still haven't carried it out. So it's from Geylang Lorong 1 and then Upper Boon King Road, Geylang Baru. This is Bendemeer Road, Boon King Road, Serangoon Road, and then this one's the looping point. Yeah, it was something along those lines. And the plan, I have seen the diagram myself. So it was like this: McNair Road, Towner Road, Balestier Road, Serangoon Road. So this was the original one. And I believe it was on hold because like the residents at this area, which is St. George's and St. Wilfred's estate, they complained that it was like kind of a waste of time. But then people have also spotted new bus stops over here. So tentatively, there would be an extra like loop over here as well. Like this thing was not in the original plans. This one only came later. Like I think this was year 2023 to 24 whereby they decided that like, oh, let's use this opportunity to extend it even more. Now, I don't know how 140 would turn out in the future, but basically last time the plans were just to extend it like this. And that's pretty much about it. So this one, unfortunately, you kind of have to wait because I don't know how the final one would turn out. And technically, does this even count as a rejection of amendment in the first place? Maybe you can say like the blue one that I drew is, but overall, this one, I think it's still gonna proceed, but I just don't know how it's gonna proceed. For this one, I do not remember which one is G and which one is W, but this is Topayo, like interchange. So one of the loops would be just like this, and it would go lorong 7, and then it would also, do this like kind of square loop thing, and then you would go back also. And the other loop is pretty much the same, like this, like this, like this. So this was like the shape of the original diagram. Okay, in the past, like the 232G and W of the past, it applied here. And this was basically in the works, and I'm not sure of the exact reason why they rejected it. And then there was also like a plan to convert 141 to like a loop service from Lorong 1 Geylang to Caldecott, Lorong 1, and then it would just go here and then, kind of do, how do you even say it? Like, kind of do this like loop thingy, something along those lines. I guess it got rejected because it was like a bit too confusing for the bus captains or something along those lines. But just know that 141, the plans to extend it to Toa Payoh East and become a loop service, that one has been scrapped. So aside from 141, the the actual amendment that came out was like 230, start from Caldecott, and then there was like Lorong 1A, and like this, and basically it was like pretty much the same thing. I think they just found it easier to do this, and they just felt it was like a better idea than executing this 232G and W and then having to kick 141 out of Toa Payoh. I mean, one service was like bound to be kicked out of Toa Payoh interchange anyway, but it's just that there was a change of plans, but in the end, one of them still ended up getting kicked out, which was this. Like, in short, they just found like a different service to take on a specific role, and that's basically how it went. And then, plus one, there was also a deliberation about this is St. Andrews, and then this was like Potong Pasir, the narrow roads. There was also a like sort of deliberation to extend it to, okay, I should not slant it. I should draw it a bit more straight. Extend it to Woodley. And because they called the same stops in this like whole looping area, you would need like red and white plates. Like you would need this, and then you flip it over to become the white plate. It's a double-sided plate basically, just like 155. This was rejected because 142, you cannot put double deckers. You also cannot put bendy buses because the roads inside, like, this area, it's only really suited for like two axle vehicles. You could try two axle double deckers if you want, but I don't know if that's worth it or not, to be honest. So yeah, they rejected because of like capacity issues, I guess. I don't really have to say much about this one, but you guys all know that these two were spared from rationalization. There was also another one that I couldn't really confirm, but it was something along the lines of this one being Sembawang to Bishan, either via Street 21 or 22, because somebody had spotted a like Tower Transit training bus there. But this one, as you know, it got rejected. And now 167 just runs 30-minute frequencies. But this was meant as a like sort of bus redundancy from North-South line. Let's say if TEL breaks down, you would take North-South line to Bishan and then you would transfer to like this 167. Conceptually it was like that, but yeah, it got scrapped. But I'm not sure if this was like even a thing in the first place. And then there is the infamous 973. So as you all know, currently the route is like Bukit Panjang ITH, and then Dairy Farm, and then it's like that. So there was one MP, a rather troublesome MP. She was like, "Oh, I want a bus from like over here to Bukit Batok, Bukit Gombak." So what they basically drew out for her was like the complete cutting off of Hume Avenue, Hillview Avenue, Bukit Batok, East Avenue 2, and then East Avenue 5, Street 52, East Avenue 5, West Avenue 5, this is Bukit Gombak, MRT, and then basically looping the exact same way as 945. So obviously, this one did not materialize because it just doesn't make any sense at all. And in the end, what was the outcome? It was just Hillview 2 shuttle as compensation, you can say. And thankfully, this one didn't turn out real. This one is kind of unrelated, but I'm just gonna bring it up. So 174, current route is Boon Lay to, it goes PIE. It used to go Jurong Road, now it's PIE, and then it goes Kampong Baru Terminal. But then there are concrete plans to send it inside Tengah and truncate it to Beauty World. So basically, Farrer Road to Orchard Road. Oops. Farrer Road to Orchard. Farrer Road to Orchard Road, and then to Chin Swee, and then to Kampong Baru Terminal. This whole area is gonna be gone. This whole like sector of route is gonna be gone. And this one, I believe it would backfire really, really badly. For this part, Kampong Baru to Chin Swee and then to Havelock and Clarke Quay, this one you can easily replace it with something like 54 or 190. That's fine. That's not the issue. The issue is you're completely cutting off the link between Farrer Road and Orchard Road. This one is definitely not gonna sit well with people. And it's also not gonna sit well with people who commute to school along Bukit Timah. So yeah, I'm just putting it out there in case this one actually, you know, in one way or another materializes in the future. So yeah. The next one is actually from SMRT's era. So as you all know, SMRT, they basically requested to convert 178 into a peak hour service. I do not know how they're gonna do that, but at that time the routes were not controlled by LTA in any way. They were like managed, and basically PTC, like Public Transport Council, they oversee the routes. So They said no to this. And they also said no to another one, which was 852. It used to be Boonlay to Yishun. They tried to withdraw it completely. PTC said no as well. So in the end, SMRT, no, it wasn't SMRT at that point. I think it was Trans Island Bus Service. They compromised and then they cut it to become Bukit Batok to Yishun. I mean, I'm also sure you all know that 852 is also, getting truncated in the future. I don't know, I don't exactly know where that is, but the degradation has already started. So this is not like news or anything, but I'm just saying what could have happened back then is actually happening now, and the whole 852 needs to be truncated or withdrawn thingy. It's not new. It has already been a thing even before LTA took control of like all the routes. SMRT had like, tried to cut it a few times already, but to no avail because PTC said no. So yeah, this one I'm also not exactly sure about the exact reasoning behind it, but there have been multiple, feedback. Okay, basically, a lot of people sent in feedback stating that they wanted 171 and 180 to merge. And obviously, this was not stated in the emails, but as in like the emails that you receive from the whatever organizations you sent them to. But the real reason behind the rejection is actually because ever since 180 got amended inside the ITH, there is actually demand coming from the ITH itself. So because of this, like in short, this one just cannot happen anymore. So that's about it. But the good news is that this one, Yishun to Tenga, currently it's actually in deliberation. So the interim route would just be Bukit Batok Road into Tenga. And I'm not sure if in the future they would send it through like Choa Chu Kang a little bit, as long as it touches ITE College West. As long as it touches there, it's fine. Whatever route it passes through, it just has to touch ITE College West. And yeah, even though we did not get this, it's good. It's like good in a way because we are also getting compensated with this, and hopefully this one actually happens. Now again, this is an actual thing. Please don't say this is a prediction or anything because this is actually what's going on right now behind the scenes. And the next one, it has nothing to do with this video, but I just thought of it. So there was this service which was how was it again? Okay, you remember this, and this, right? This one is basically like the previous version of a 960E that comes from Shenton Way. And this one was from Marina Center, Orchard, BKE, and Woodlands. Whereas this one, it's basically like a duplicate, a more or less duplicate of Trans Island Bus Service 181, which is now 961, and 180. Basically, they shared a lot of common sectors, but the one that we'll be focusing on is this one. Because ever since like the withdrawal of this one in 1996, there were a lot of students from Whitley Road and Dunyan Road. I think it was like the current like ACS Barker, that school area right now. The people complained and they hoped that like at least one of them would be reinstated. So this one's not really like a failed amendment. sorry, it's like an amendment that got shelved or anything. But just a fun fact: in 1998, they actually introduced Service 700. Yeah, this one was not as direct because this one went like Woodlands, Marsiling, uh, Kranji. It copied 960 but did not copy the Jelebu Petir Pending sector. It was just Bukit Panjang Road. So 700 was sort of like a, a little compensation for the Whitley and Dunyon student population. It was just kind of like to appease them a little bit. And unfortunately, this one only lasted like 2 years before 700 was cut back to Bukit Panjang. So, yeah, nothing related to the video, but uh, it's just something fun that I would like to bring up. Yeah. Another one was like service 10 used to be from like Tampines to I think it was Jurong Interchange or Jurong East. Okay, but I'm pretty sure it went Clementi at some point. So they 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 truncated it to Kent Ridge. People got mad, and in the end they compensated with 183, which loops at Science Park. Again, this is not really related to the video, but it's also I'm just going by order, like 180, 181, 182, 183. I'm just going in ascending order, and this was just a little thought that I thought of. There was also another one which one of my friends told me. It was 502. So currently 502 starts from Sunli Bus Depot, Pioneer Road North, Jurong West, Avenue 5, Jurong West Street 75, 64, Central 1, and then Boon Lay Avenue. So I think once upon a time, they tried to truncate 502 back to Boon Lay. Okay, 502 originated from Boon Lay in the past, but right now, not right now, sorry. I think like decades ago, SBS Transit, I think tried to like put it back to Boon Lay because they just decided that this whole portion over here was just unneeded and like did mileage. But unfortunately, this I don't know if it was PTC rejecting or anything, like not approving, but basically there was still demand coming from Avenue 5, Street 75, 64, Central 1, and Boon Lay Avenue. This is like River Valley High School. Yeah. So because there was actually demand, yeah, I know it's an express service, but because it was direct, there was actually demand for this, and in the end, they decided not to cut it. And one of the reasons stated for this cut was because 185 pretty much duplicated until here. It was only until here, and then 185 just goes on its own, and yeah. But it was just because they just found this sector worthless. But in reality, it wasn't as worthless as what SBS Transit at that time expected. There was also another one which is related to service 856 and 981. So I'm just gonna briefly draw out Senoko Industrial Estate. It was like this, like this, this, like this, like this, and this. And then this is Canberra Road. So service 856 was like it's like it goes here, goes inside Senoko. And the whole reason why 981 was even introduced in the first place was because it's to lessen the strain on 856. So in that case, can you imagine if 981 was never being proposed in the past by SMRT? 856 might have actually done this. Loop here and then loop here. So this is something that might have happened. It's not necessarily like an amendment that didn't come true, but just imagine if they did not propose 981. They might have made 856, just throw like this, which just looks hilarious to me. Next one had to do with like fleet restrictions. So 858 in the early 2000s or something, they tried to send one 0405G into Changi Airport. And yes, they obviously sought permission from Changi Airport Group, which is this one, not this one. This one is basically the organization, and this is CGA as a place. I think they sought permission. They tried an 0405G into, because back then Terminal 3 did not exist. So yeah, they trialed a bendy bus in Terminals 1 and 2. But one of the turns, it was just too tight for the 045Gs to turn. How should I say it? It's like it could turn, but there was a lot of difficulty because 0405Gs, the front was longer and the back, the trailer section was shorter. But you fast forward to like 2015, they eventually succeeded getting bendy buses into Changi Airport because Man A24, the front and back were like about the same length, and therefore because the pivot is here and not here, there wasn't like this one big obstruction over here, so it could turn better. I've made a video about this before, but basically because the pivot is here, it could turn better, and this was sort of a failed attempt to deploy bendy buses on A58 due to growing demand, which uh, which like it became stagnant for a few years until 2015, whereby they finally were permanent on A58. This is also unrelated to the video, but just a fun fact. Okay, now it gets interesting. You might want to timestamp this if you want. 860. So this bus service was introduced in 2012. 2012. It was from Yishun to Khatib MRT loop. And then over time they extended to Yio Chu Kang. But there was actually something brewing behind the scenes. One of the suggestions was actually to extend this thing down all the way to Toa Payoh. I think it was like Thomson, then Caldecott. Basically, Toa Payoh Rise into Toa Payoh. Whether this thing went via Upper Thomson or Mayflower, basically Ang Mo Kio Avenue, 5 or 4, or Marymount. I do not know the exact details of this, but the reason why they rejected this one was because they cited North-South Line MRT duplication. So in the end, Yishun to Yio Chu Kang was picked instead because of cost reasons and mileage reasons. Basically, they just didn't want to pay for the mileage. So yeah. The next one had something to do with 992. So as you know, this thing is renumbered from 944. I already knew this amendment like I think 1 or 2 years before its original release date. I think it was like 1.5 years. I saw the posters, and then like before it got released to the public. Uh, so initially, this is Bukit Batok West Avenue 6. There was a deliberation between whether it should go the straight route or the winding route. This was the actual thing I saw in the diagram. So there was option 1 and option 2. So eventually option 2 was chosen because it just had way more connectivity, and along these stops you could transfer to like 160 and 180 is the same bus stop bus transfer. So yeah, this was actually a deliberation in the past. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. And speaking of like Tenga, I cannot really attest to the I cannot attest to the validity of this statement, but there was like 871, and this route was like it went via a different route in the early stages, but there was supposed to be a so-called 994, which was basically like Tenga. It would copy 871 all the way up till West Avenue 5. Because currently 871 it goes East Avenue 5, Street 52, East Avenue 5. But this 994 over here was supposed to loop the same way as 945. But again, I think it's because of like space constraints at the bus stops. These bus stops are really small. So I don't even know if this was the number, but I'm just using a placeholder number so that you can get the concept. So conceptually, this was rejected, and then they decided to funnel this 871 into Bukit Batok West and then Bukit Gombak. So basically, 871 had remnants of the so-called old 994 route. And this information is by TIB12340 YouTube channel. Please go subscribe to him. The next one is something that you all know as well, and something that I was like a little bit shocked when it did not happen. It was 965 to Buangkok. So okay, I'll just put it simply. The reason why it was rejected was because if this thing were to like proceed on to Buangkok, there are like two solutions. First is to completely give up Sengkang interchange, just go Compassvale Road, Compassvale Drive, Sengkang Central, and then into Buangkok ITH. And then the second one is kind of like current service tree. So how this would work is something like Compassvale Road, Sengkang East Way, and for the Buangkok direction, it would call along Sengkang East Way, and then it would go via Sengkang East Road. Basically, this is Sengkang East Road. I do not know the exact route, but conceptually it was like that. And then for the return direction, it would go from Sengkang East Road, Sengkang Square. Okay, I greatly exaggerated the distance, but it will go inside Sengkang interchange. It would call and then loop out, just like service tree at Pasir Ris towards Tampines. It's like conceptually the same thing. It would come out and then just continue up Compassvale Road towards Yishun and Woodlands. So now you can see why 965 to Buangkok was actually a consideration, but eventually got rejected. And I'm not even sure if in future it would still be extended, like whether they are actually gonna like do this kind of jank solution or not. I do not know. But I'm just saying that when I first received information about this, 965 was legitimately one of the services that was like considered but got rejected in the end due to reasons that I've tried to illustrate here. I'm not really gonna illustrate this one, but this one has been ongoing for a very long time. So it's just a truncation to UNOS. Again, I do not know if this would happen or not, and it's the same thing with like the entire fate of A53M. I don't even know if this thing would survive or be withdrawn completely. So just putting it out there because 966 is after 965 and I just thought of these. But just know that 966 being cut to UNOS has been like discussed for like years and years and years already, but up till now no solution has been found. So yeah. And then plus one, it is 967. This one has got nothing to do with route, but this one was originally supposed to be a feeder service. LTA wanted it to be a feeder service, but SMRT over here said no, because this thing starts at Woodlands temporary bus interchange and is not together with like the other feeders at Woodlands ITH. They wanted to like, you know, split these two groups logistically. And when you think of it from SMRT's point of view, putting a feeder inside a temporary bus interchange, okay, I know that there's 374, but SMRT, there was something that SMRT did not like about this. So SMRT said, let's make this trunk. And that's how this number was even a thing. It sounds funny, but this is really what happened behind the scenes. I've talked about this before, but you all by now should have known that 974 was essentially part of a rejected express service from west to northeast. And 974, the KJE bus stops are just remnants of said express service to northeast. So yeah. And then recently, I don't know if it's recent or not, but 979M was supposed to be 979A, and they just didn't want to use A because it just didn't really fit their purpose, and A usually denotes like short working trip and M wasn't. M was like kind of a loop. So in the end they chose M. It's like, can you imagine if like every other service use A for short working trip and then there is this one clown service like 700A that it's not a short working trip, but I mean kind of is, but it's more of like a modified service. So because of this, again, playing with letters, they decided to make this 979M, and this information is also from TIB1234T. So thanks to him. There were also supposed to be services like 41 and 117. I don't remember the details, but one of them was like from Choa Chu Kang to Hougang. I'm not sure what route it took, but these were rejected. And then there was also another one, 985. This was by SMRT. They tried to truncate it to Toa Payoh. They just didn't want the Geylang Lorong 1 and Boon King sector at all. But again, PTC at that time said no. So that's what happened in the past. And I don't know how many of you knew this. So again, the reason why I even made this video is to tell you all that even if your information turns out false, we can still learn a lot from them. Even if you're wrong, it's completely okay to be like, so-called confidently wrong, at least, because at the very least, you know that what you're talking about still makes sense. It's just because the proposal or what did not go through. So yeah, basically we can learn the reasons why amendments are green lighted or rejected. And okay, I don't even know what to say anymore, so bye.